Welcome to the Exploring Potential podcast, where we delve into the realm of unique and novel ideas within organizations. Join us as we uncover the driving force behind innovation and success by engaging in thought-provoking conversations and stories with some of the brightest minds in various fields. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us and another warm welcome to the Exploring Potential podcast. I'm your host, Brett King. So, what happens when we've got a cool idea for our business, a new revenue channel perhaps, and we're totally amped for it? If you're anything like me, we might be immediately ready to jump in at full speed upon inception of the idea. But how do we bring this to market effectively and ensure our success? How do we bring our teams along and make sure that they're bought into the vision? Today, we're going to talk about vetting a new product or service for our company and the importance of understanding our people, aka our consumers. Obviously, it's critical we continuously innovate to listen to the market, deliver new opportunities that add value for our customers, and new revenue streams for our organizations. Whether we're running a movie theater, a cannabis brand, a family entertainment center, or like our guest, an e-commerce platform, one of the most absolutely critical steps is to truly understand our consumer. We may think we know what they're looking for, but how do we really know before it's too late? Sometimes this needs to be an iterative process with trial and error, and sometimes, honestly, the risk might outweigh the reward. But when the right process is followed, the right information is taken into account, we can experience massive success for our organizations just from a seed of an idea. To get us there, I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Eric Steckling, CEO of Brio Product Group. After college and a corporate career, Eric's interest in inventing and innovating drove him to start a product development company. In 2014, Eric launched Brio Product Group. Brio creates men's grooming tools and is Eric's main business focus. Over the years, Brio has created additional brands and acquired the oral care brand Ollie to expand its oral care offering as well. Eric's favorite tasks include conceptual design, branding, and feature set development, generally just trying to make things better. While he started out with product design skills, Eric has transitioned to spending most of his time on digital marketing efforts and leading a content creation team. Eric's skills in design and manufacturing have come from his experience building things with his own hands. Eric is also focusing on how material and process improvements that first originate in industrial processes can make their way into consumer products. Eric, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for that generous intro, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Excited for our conversation today. And I spoke a little bit about this during the intro, but Eric, would you mind just giving us a quick background of your path to entrepreneurship and the current brands that you operate?
Yeah, sure. So early on, I just figured that I wasn't going to be a great fit for a corporate career. And I think I knew that from a young age. And also, had a father who, was an attorney, but then also had side hustles, I guess, before that term really existed. So, I had always kind of seen what that side of life looked like in terms of being your own boss and making things work for yourself. So I think that was pretty important to me early on. And then I think where the trouble is, as you grow up, of course, you never really know exactly what that thing is going to be. So I have no secrets here. I didn't really get a good start on figuring that out until I was about 30 years old. But I actually don't feel bad about that at all. I was just at the Henry Ford Village and found out that how old Henry Ford was when he first started Ford Motor Company. And I think he was like 42 or something.
Oh, wow.
So no one would guess that because, you'd think he'd get that started when he was 20 or so. But yeah, so that's how I got here.
That's awesome. And how did Brio come to be?
Yeah, so I was an early adapter when it came to buying things online. I've always been like a picky consumer. So, if you go to the store, back in the 90s, your choice of what's on the shelf for any given product category is pretty limited. And for a lot of retailers, it still kind of is today if you're going into brick and mortar. So with whatever important thing I was buying at the time, going online and looking there and seeing, being able to dive in and like look at all the options and figure out kind of what's going to work best for you. That got me kind of interested in e-commerce. From there, I kind of learned about Amazon because getting started, it's really hard when you're starting from scratch. You have no products, you have no skills, you have no access to channels. So that idea that kind of all of this with Amazon was kind of within my control or within the range of possibility. That's how I got started there.
Excellent. It's always where some of the best ideas get started is being a heavy user and then figuring out, how do I get into this? There's opportunity here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it felt like a way in because, I didn't feel like I was ever going to, say, invent a product or come to market with a product and go right to retail. It feels like it's kind of a good old boys industry where, it's really long process. Like your thing that you're selling has to fit with mass market. There's margin problems, there's manufacturing problems, but with the direct consumer model, you cut all that out and you can make something that isn't mass market. I think that's like the best thing about it. It's like, the world is now flooded with way more options now than what a giant consumer packaged goods company would have dreamt up, right? Like,
right.
If you just kind of look at where the world is with like deodorant, for example, would the big companies have ever developed the sort of aluminum free or like the new products that exist now that are super popular? I don't know, probably not. So right. I think for me it was really a lot more about access to a market or like a really specific market than it was like just being into e-commerce, I guess.
Sure. And there's, when you talk about these options, it's a great segue. There's into, the many different products that you offer. There's a lot of thought and intention that really should go into a new product or service, or even an internal initiative launch, right? If we're talking about a larger organization, regardless of industry. What is your process like for vetting the viability of new products and items that you're offering for others?
Yeah. So it's funny that you ask me that because I feel like I'm constantly replaying things that I've learned over in my mind to try and remind myself because a lot of times it's easy to forget. So in having nothing to do with this podcast, I actually wrote down, I have a notebook in front of me pretty much all the time. So I wrote this down today. Make things that people want. And it's so funny that I actually wrote that down to remind myself, but I think that that's probably thing number one that I would say to anyone who's making something. You might be tempted to start a new initiative, have a new offering, launch a new product because you see a competitor doing it, or you think that it's popular, or you think there's opportunity there. And those reasons might be fine, but I'd say check that first reason first. If you make something that people really want, you can't go wrong. I know it sounds like overly simplified, but I think that it actually gets overlooked quite a bit.
I think sometimes the best and most important lessons for us to remember are the ones that are that simple, right? I love it. I wrote that down too. Make things that people want. I mean, it's simple, but it's powerful. And I guess speaking of what people want, how can we work to best understand our audience, whether it's customers or maybe it's internal stakeholders, for something internal, because that's, getting to the bottom of what they do want. How can we best understand that?
Yeah. And I was sweating a little bit on your intro because I kept hearing you say that. I'm like, oh man, I think the answer to this is like, there actually isn't an easy way to figure out what people want. So that's my answer. I mean, the nuance, what you'll hear most often is, test, right? Obviously you want to test things out, before you dump a whole lot of time or money into anything. And I feel like that's a best practice, but it's hard though, because not everything can be tested easily. So, that's where the decisions get very difficult. I heard about this or I read about this process in a book a couple weeks ago that Amazon uses, and I think it fits in here because even if it's an internal initiative, or a smaller product or something to launch, having that process in place where you are checking back with, hey, does this meet the needs of our customers, our potential customers, or whoever you're serving. And so the process is this, and I don't go out of the way to say a lot of great things about Amazon, but this like internal thing that they did sounded pretty cool. And it's basically they write a press release for the thing that they're working on, the project. And, they kind of have to answer those questions of, okay, how is this going to make our customers' lives easier? Like, how is it going to serve these people? What is the benefit? And, basically write it up in a way where you're describing how it works. And if you go through and read it afterwards and you're not really excited about it, and you're not like, okay, this is it, you can go back and rewrite it, try again. Or you can circulate it with your team and decide, hey, maybe we actually don't want to do this. So, and a lot of it is about thought and next steps. It's like, okay, well, what is this actually going to look like? How long is it going to take? What's it going to cost? What's involved? When will we know if we have an answer?
Right.
And I know it's different for every industry you're in. For me, it's hard because even if we launch a product and it does well, it doesn't mean that there's a lot more potential there. Depending on the marketing and the situation and who we're launching it to and how, it goes the other way too. You can launch a product and have it start off really slow, but it can eventually gain steam and turn into something really good once you build the support behind it, build all the content and the marketing channels. So,
right.
Yeah, it's not always easy as like, oh, we're going to know day one if this is where we're going.
I thank you for sharing that story about Amazon, because I think that's a really powerful exercise that can kind of be done. I mean, tell me if you agree or disagree with this, but without having read what you read, to me, it feels like that can be done at many stages of the iterative process of like from when it's the seed of an idea all the way through, like some work has been done, like, because to your point, not everything can just be tested. It's not that easy, right? I think of movie theaters and, some of the innovations around new seats. Maybe you can dip your toes in, but you're still going to spend a lot of money to dip your toes in. But this press release exercise can really be done from the very beginning through like, okay, what's the next stage of vetting this? What's the next stage, right? Are these still ringing true? Is this still worth pursuing? That seems like a really powerful exercise. I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. And maybe we can circle back and get a better link to something that describes that a little bit better, because I totally overly simplified the process and butchered it a little bit. So
that's all right. That's it's hard to remember word for word. Yeah, we get the general gist of it, and that maybe we can put we always have show notes, so maybe we can put a link down there as well. But I think that's again a big powerful takeaway. And you started talking about this factor kind of at the end there as you were wrapping up. But I'd love to know, how do you approach the considerations of your marketing or messaging fit? Like, how do you determine the right channels to reach the right people? Because I think that's the other big piece of, okay, now we've got a product, but now what do we do? How do we get it out there? What's your process look like?
Yeah, and that's a good question, because again, the answers there are not always clear. So, for example, your product might start selling really well with a specific demographic. And maybe that's just because of the content that existed. So if there's a certain demographic that a certain content creator has made something for, and it doesn't matter, like age, race, gender, all the same rules apply. You might do really well with the specific niche, but then go back and look and be like, oh, well, that's because that's like the audience we were talking to, So I think there's some signals there where you have to feel it out and make sure you're getting a good read, because that can play in for sure.
Right. You may be thinking that there's this great success, and maybe there's great success elsewhere, but because of your marketing messaging and how you're looking at things, you may be missing it. It reminds me of several podcasts ago, we had a guest on, Vicky Baker, and we were talking about people analytics, and her background is in higher education, and something she mentioned was you may set KPIs, right? And all businesses should be setting their KPIs to get a pulse on what that is. But if you're not kind of looking holistically and doing a deep dive into the KPI and the analytics and what it really means, you may be missing something entirely. And her example there was, if you set a KPI of increasing attendance or increasing the amount of people on campus, you may hit that KPI, but if you're not looking at it holistically from an analytical standpoint, maybe you are down women and down people of color because all you were doing was we're going to pick this one messaging and this one messaging channel, and maybe all that attracted was a bunch of white men. And so it to me, what you just said really reminded me of that like you could lean into something, but also be missing something at the same time if you're not looking at it analytically.
Absolutely. We could probably do a whole podcast episode on picking the wrong KPI. Right. So
yes.
Another great example of that I've heard is Disney. And if they said, we're going to measure our success by park attendance, and that is it. It's like number of people, in the door. You can see where that would go wrong really quickly, right? I mean, everyone who goes ends up having just an awful experience, and then no one comes back, So
yep.
I always laugh when I hear about companies and their quarterly goals, because that's great for Wall Street, but consumers don't have quarterly goals, and it's never in alignment. It never works out. Give it up.
Right. Give it up. So when you're looking at this, from your perspective, I mean, there's incredible importance that's placed on the marketing or communication channel and the choices you're making. What is your philosophy behind that? Do you try multiple channels and kind of blast everywhere, and then kind of lean into one or two, or does it vary depending on what kind of product or service you're launching?
Yeah, I think it depends on how you've built the business, in what channels you're good at and what channels you have access to. And there's a little bit of that baked in is what channels are best for your product and service. Mm-hmm. So to answer that, I would say, more is not better. From an e-commerce perspective, I think it would hold true to a lot of brick and mortar as well, that, have 2 or 3, but not 10. And I think that took me a long time to learn that, because when, for example, we're selling toothbrushes to people, they make everyone's lives better. That, our product, the Smart Clean, is relevant for 90% of the population, which is great. However, it's really bad and makes things really hard, because we, initially it's well, who do you sell to? Where do you go? So it's what channel, what demographic, what are you offering? What I've found is that your alignment, to have something resonate, to get traction, you have to have really tight alignment. The thing you're selling has to very specifically solve someone's problem, because there's so much noise out there right now that we're really good at tuning things out. And unfortunately, people have been tuning out information about sonic toothbrushes for too long, because not enough Americans are using them. So,
yes.
As my little plug there, but no, it's so, just to recap, I'd say few channels, whatever works best for you. If you're a new business, there will be a learning curve. You will have to test. So you can't just say, I'm going to know what's going to work right off the bat. I think there's a level of testing.
Right.
But after that, and again, this is something I've was bad at, trying to get better at. Once you do get to that point where you're okay, I feel like I have something working, stick with it and stop looking around at other things, because it's so easy in the ecom world, there are so many, shiny objects to distract your attention with. In the marketing realm, there's 100 things you can do. So, yeah,
Right.
fewer is
Right.
better.
And some of that is going to require testing to know what those fewer channels are, to your point, especially if this is an external initiative, or an external launch, new product, new offering. It may take a little testing to just see, where are we getting the traction, and where are we finding success? Where are these people at, where we are cutting through the noise? I like what you said, people are tuning things out. So how do we make it so they're not tuning us out? And so now, of course, I sort of look at things flipped at an internal perspective of, if it's an organization that's got some sort of internal initiative, at the end of the day, employees are humans too, right? Employees are consumers, and consumers are employees, because we're all human, we're all people, and that's what we're talking about. And so I want to kind of stretch what we've been talking about, and I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on this, but the dots that I'm connecting can kind of be the same thing, right? If you're trying to get your employees on board with an internal initiative, pick the right channels. If you just start blasting stuff out kind of and blasting a lot out, right, it's going to just start to be noise. If, we've all been at those companies where it's like, oh, another memo, right? Or another email blast from whoever. And each one to that person is like the most important thing, and everybody needs to pay attention. But the reality is, in the same way that external marketing, it just becomes noise, internal communications can also just become noise. So I think there's this, I liked the words you used, this tight alignment, really understanding where specifically are we going to reach the people that we're trying to reach within our organization with this message. And the answer is likely not in mass email blasts. Instead, what specific channel can we use to really cut through the noise and reach them? Those are the dots that kind of connect with me from taking from the external to the internal. What are your thoughts on that? Would you agree with that, or am I off base there?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if channel is as important as messaging and consistency, and not changing the plan every week.
Right.
Because when you're dealing with a smaller team, people generally do like the idea that someone knows where the ship is going.
Right.
I was once an employee of a big company, and it doesn't matter where you are. You want to know that the guy driving knows what he's doing, and that, is taking you all in the right place. So whatever side of that you're on, that part is super important. So, making your vision clear to the company, and that can be broad, so that a lot of sort of maneuvering can fall under that. And then, just essentially setting expectations and not giving the idea that the plan is changing all the time. And those other processes, like getting buy-in internally from your team, having them validate it, seeing their thoughts on it, that can be very helpful.
Absolutely. That's really how we end up bringing our teams along with us. I like where you went with that. The consistency of the messaging being more important than the channels. And I liked what you said about just clear communications from leadership. So, whether it's a change in policy or, whether we're launching a brand new product line, those things need to stay consistent and true within the organization, which again, it's at the end of the day, I always talk about this, that marketing and training are kind of two sides of the same coin. And when I say training, I'm also talking about like internal communications, right? Mm-hmm. They're two sides of the same coin, right? In both cases, we're talking about influencing human behavior. On the marketing side, we're trying to get you to click or buy, we're trying to influence that behavior. On the internal side, we're trying to influence the way you do something or your buy-in to something. So marketing and training and internal communications, to me, are all the same thing. It's all influencing human behavior. And there's lots of different ways to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there have been plenty of times I've, told people on the team about an idea, and then you get that blank stare where you
yes.
all right, let me let's talk about this. Yeah, absolutely. It's totally a communication problem
Yeah.
to solve, and everyone's got to be on the same page for sure.
Yeah. Yep. And we've talked about some really powerful ways to make sure that happens. Eric, you've shared some really excellent tips that, again, your expertise in launching these new products and really vetting them and getting them out into the marketplace and making sure that you find the right channel. Like these are, we've had some really powerful gems during this conversation. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you'd like to add on this topic that perhaps others that are listening might benefit from hearing?
Yeah, I mean, we could kind of circle back, I guess, to the product launch stuff if you want to, and we could talk, just I guess in general terms about, maybe what that looks like. I know.
Let's do it.
Yeah, because I think that's where the creativity part comes in. Because people are awful at figuring out like what that best solution is. Well, let me put it this way. Your customers are terrible at product development. They can kind of tell you what they want, but they have no idea what form that takes. So, I think that's where it's the burden of the company, the business, whatever, to be innovative and to find that way that solves the problem that also, works best for your customers. Because, you can ask them, they're not going to tell you anything useful. They'll kind of tell you what they want, but it won't end up like what it looks like. Or there's a lot of times they'll ask for things that are just sort of impossible. We've had that happen a few times. They're like, all right, we want this and this and this at this price. I'm like, okay, wow, that's hard. So, yeah, I guess so. Maybe my one piece of advice there is just like, your customers aren't going to do that work for you. The creativity is on, or the burden is on you to do something creative to develop that new product or service.
Right. I really like what you said that, customers aren't going to tell you quite literally what that looks like. They're going to tell you a want, but it's up to the company to really interpret that and turn it around. It's sort of a one step removed from, was it Steve Jobs that used to say, they don't know what they want. I'll tell them what they want. When he was developing products. But this is kind of one step down from perhaps that attitude, but really recognizing like they don't know. They know they want these things, but they don't know what the final thing to ask for looks like. And that's on us. That's on us to figure out.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And, as technology changes and the tools we have in terms of running a business and trying to solve problems, as those change, that opens up new opportunity to solve people's problems differently. And I think for me, that's why it's fun. On the brick and mortar business side, there's a lot of it's more tech that's changing. On the consumer product side, it's both. It's tech and it's materials and processes. But yeah, you basically look for those things that are new and see if they can be used as part of a better solution. And I think that's a good way to approach it.
Right. Oh, I love that. Well, I asked already, but I'm going to ask again because I think we went into some of the most valuable stuff we've talked about. Is there anything else that I've left out of asking you? Because I think I might have missed a big one there where I'm so glad that you brought that up. But anything else that I haven't given you the opportunity to speak about?
I don't think so. I mean, we could probably talk for a while in any other direction, but trying to keep this to the point and relevant. I know everyone's busy.
Yeah, Eric, you and I could probably talk all day about any aspect of this. I think, and we have. In fact, it took us a while to get started this afternoon, just because we were going back and forth on several other ideas. I really appreciate you taking the time, Eric, to talk with me today. I want to take a moment now to just pause and give you a little bit of time to talk about whatever is most important to you right now. If there's company initiative idea, whatever it is, the floor is yours, and would love to hear from you.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't have anything to sell you or your audience. So I mean, let's just like keep creating value for people. The easiest like thing I could think to maybe do that was just basically sharing some books that I've read recently that I thought were pretty helpful.
Oh yeah. Love
and
that.
yeah, maybe you've read a few. I know one of them I actually think I already recommended to you, so you can stop me when I get there. The first one most recently is called Never Split the Difference. And it's by a former FBI hostage negotiator named Chris Voss. Super relevant in all types of communications, not just negotiations, but well, it makes you think actually that everything is a negotiation, right? Because in a way it is. So that one, Ready, Fire, Aim.
Real quick, I got one comment on that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but for anybody that's a fan of, everybody learns a little differently. The book, first of all, 100% get the book. He also, I believe, has a masterclass through that app, Masterclass, and there's some video and interviews with him on the, some of the subjects from that book. So just sorry to interrupt, but I loved that book, and I think everybody really could get value out of that.
Yeah, for sure. And so I want to go back and look at the masterclass too, because I saw that like advertised somewhere, probably after I clicked on something. But yeah, I will check that out, because honestly, the biggest letdown for me was that he didn't read the audiobook.
Yes. Right.
He talks a lot about his voice and how he uses his voice. It just would have been a lot better coming from him. So. Oh,
you'll love now I'm maybe Masterclass will throw me some residuals here. No, I think you would love it because he is actually the one that's in it, and he goes through some scenarios. And yeah, for anybody, negotiation is a skill that everybody could benefit from, and that is one of the best pieces of material that I've seen on it. Yeah. I promise I won't talk about every single book recommendation, but that one really stuck out to me.
Yeah. So, well, then the next one on this list I think is super relevant to our conversation today, and it's called Ready, Fire, Aim. At first I thought the book was like a little oversimplified, but I think that's where the genius is in the simplicity. And going back to this idea of really, really pushing hard on like sales and traction first, because for most businesses, it's the hardest thing. And for a lot of people, it's the least fun, like myself included. But you got to do it first. And like in the book, really just makes it painfully clear and shows you why and how important that is. So I think it's great lessons for anyone starting that new initiative, or doing that thing where sales is involved, but maybe you don't want to do it first. So
yes.
Let me see. So the other one I was going to mention to you, or wait, was that it? I don't remember. There's Think Again by Adam Grant, which I think I never considered this concept before reading the book, but the idea of like what that process looks like to change your mind. It turns out like adjusting your beliefs is super important, and that we should be better at doing it like more often. So yeah, weird concept, but very relevant to business.
Relevant to this conversation, because we've got to be willing to walk away if we need to.
Yeah, for sure. And then Thinking Fast and Slow is another classic. Probably recommend that to anyone, but yeah, there's a few more, but I feel like I've taken enough time throwing ideas out there.
I would sit here all day and listen to book recommendations. We have similar tastes in books, so maybe you and I connect and send some lists back and forth. I second everything that was just recommended. I need to read the second one you recommended. I have not checked out yet, so I will check that one out. That was the Ready, Fire, Aim, right? Is what that's called?
Yeah.
Oh,
okay. Sorry, I remember. It was Built to Sell was the one I recommended to you before.
Right.
That didn't make my list today, but it was it was on my specific recommendations to you.
Love it. I love it. Yeah, that's another good one to have on there. No, that's awesome. I appreciate you using that time to our audience is comprised of readers, of people who want to take in content like that. So I think not only have you given us some really valuable takeaways just from our conversation, but you've given us some further homework to take this to the next level. So I appreciate you taking your time to plug those. That was really awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's good to talk to someone who's in Michigan. I feel like a lot of times I don't. You're sporting the Michigan brand also on your shirt today, which is good to see.
That's right. Yes, I didn't know. I wasn't sure how visible that is, but yes, you're absolutely right. Yes.
Yeah. When it comes to awareness and digital marketing and e-commerce, Carhartt is having quite a moment right now. So it's good to see that.
Yeah, I agree. They really are. And I'm going to take that back to my wife and tell her that I got a compliment on this shirt because I was told very specifically not to wear orange on this show. So I'm going to take that and say, you know what? Eric appreciated my shirt today and got a compliment on it.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, Eric, thank you so much for the time that we've been able to spend together. I sometimes I do a little recap of takeaways. I'm going to just say one takeaway that kind of came out near the beginning. And like we talked about, sometimes the simplest thing is the best thing. Make things that people want. We're taking it straight out of Eric's notebook. But if nothing else from today's podcast episode, make things that people want and listen to it again to get all the ways of how to get there. But that's the bottom line takeaway I think that I want everybody to walk away with. And I thank Eric for that. I thank you, Eric, for joining us today and providing so much value. I want to thank our listeners and viewers for tuning in to the show. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you're getting value from this content on the Exploring Potential podcast. You can subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever it is that you do get your podcasts. Please, while you're there, give us a rating, give us a review, let us know how we're doing. And just a reminder, you can also watch, like, and subscribe on YouTube. And then visit exploringpotential.com for more information just about our team and the type of work that we do. And with that, enjoy your day, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everyone.